before I watch what would be the first of 5 games that I'm going to be keeping an eye on Sunday in terms of this match week, I'm going to do a little review in terms of looking the first 6 game of this match week, and I am once again going to do a 2-part series in terms of this match week where I look at the first 6 game in part 1, and then I'll look at the last game on Saturday and look at the 5 games that's going to be happening on Sunday in part 2 of the review. But with that being said, let us now get into the first game, which is NYCFC winning 2-1 against the Quakes. Now, I've been saying it throughout this season, where coming into this last month of the season for the Quakes, I knew that we were not going to get a lot of points. And I knew that coming into this murderous run of this last month of the season, if we do not build ourselves a cushion in terms of heading into this last month and that we could be in a good position of making the playoffs, there is a big chance that we could really miss the playoffs and have a collapse in the final month of the season because of this tough stretch that we're on. Well, this loss is another example of how my worst nightmare of the fact that the Quakes are not in a good position of heading into the playoffs, and that they're going to have to go through this gauntlet of a schedule to able to secure themselves in the playoffs, and that my worst nightmare was that they're not going to make it at the end of the gauntlet, and it seemed like this game is a process of my nightmare being come true. I mean, yeah, we need to get at least something out of this game. And what's also frustrating about this game and the fact that we didn't get anything out of this one is that we could have easily got something out of this one, and that this game, especially what happened in the first half, kind of summarize what is it like to be a Quakes fan. So, 20 minutes into the game, Wando scores from Vako and Eriksson to give the Quakes a 1-0 lead, and you think, okay, maybe they could actually get all 3 points or even get a point out of this game, and that would really help our playoff causes, and you just think that the team was giving you a lot of optimism. But as I said many times before, anytime when the Quakes give you optimism and anytime you get hopes up on this team, they will crush you in a big, big way. And they absolutely crushed our hope 20 minutes later when NYCFC, in a span of 3 minutes, completely turned this game on its head. And then in the 40th minute, Keaton Park scores his first ever MLS goal to give the equalizer for NYCFC. And what's frustrating about this equalizer isn't just the fact that the defending from the Quakes was very poor in terms of that goal, but what started this attack was just some very brain dead kind of play from Marcos Lopez, where he decided to just throw the ball to nobody. Like, I have no idea what he was thinking of doing, and the fact that at the end of the play, he was actually angry, the fact that his teammate wasn't there to, of course, able to receive the ball when he threw it in. Well, I understand the fact that he's angry, the fact that none of his teammates really come near him to, of course, throw in that ball. But at the same time, you should have never thrown that ball in play at the same time. If you see that some of the teammates are not able to get into the position that you want them to be in to throw the ball into the box, then tell them. Tell them that get in this position and then I'll throw the ball in. You don't just throw the ball in and then you get mad at your teammate and telling them that they didn't get into the correct position. I mean, that was just such a schoolboy error, and that I seen 12-year-old able to execute a simple throw-in like that better than what Marcos Lopez did in that instant. And then 3 minutes later, Matrita scores from Tajuri Shradi to give NYCFC the second goal. And guess who is once again the main culprit of this goal? Yep, that is right. It's Marcos Lopez who, he made a weak challenge on Tajuri Shradi and allowed him to spring free to play a perfect ball to Matrita to, of course, give NYCFC a second goal. I mean, you could obviously question the fact that the Quakes did not do a good job marking Matrita, but at the same time, it was a very good ball that Tajuri Shradi played in, and that ball that Tajuri Shradi played into Matrita would have never happened if Lopez would have been much stronger and trying to make sure that Tajuri Shradi doesn't get acres of space to able to pass that ball to Matrita in the box. So yeah, just like that, it was 2-1, and in a span of 3 minutes, my hopes and dream the Quakes can get 3 points out of this game looked like all but dead. Now, in the second half, the Quakes had a lot of possession, but they were toothless in front of goal. Sounds very familiar of the Quakes, isn't it? I mean, the fact that they have a lot of possession, and yet they are toothless in front of goal. This has been a problem for the Quakes in the last couple of games, and that I feel like teams right now clearly have found out that all you need to do is just kind of be defensive and trying to shut off any gaps whatsoever in the pitch, and that they of course will have a very tough time to break you down. And that so far this season, I haven't seen a lot of instance where the Quakes are able to break down a team that sits in a low block and able to score a goal. And that is also kind of an example of the fact that we still lack that creativity and also lack that goal scorer that we desperately need in this team. But yeah, at the end of the day, the game ends 2-1, and in terms of shots in this game, 15 shots compared to 13 that the Quakes had, or NYCFC had. 7 shots on goal compared to 8 that NYCFC had. Both teams had 4 shots off target. Quakes had 4 shots that was blocked compared to 1 that NYCFC had. And possession-wise, 61% possession compared to 39% possession. Most of that possession came in the second half, but like I said, despite the fact that we had a lot of possession, we were just toothless in front of goal. And after this game, I heard a lot of people talk about, well, you know, the reason why the Quakes lost this game was because of the fact that they were playing a short field known as Yankee Stadium, and that they were on a short rest, and that teams usually play at 9:30 a.m. or 12:30 p.m. Eastern time, usually does not favor the visitor team. But at the end of the day, you know, I understand that there are some factors that the Quakes had to battle with and some adversity that they have to deal with. And at the end of the day, I don't think the Quakes play incredibly bad by NYCFC and that they didn't just get completely embarrassed in this game. But I think it's getting to that part of the season where you can make any excuse about why this team did not win, and you can make any in case that, you know, well, yes, the team of course play hard. Unfortunately, at the end they were very unlucky in terms of getting the result. But at the end of the day, we're at this part of the season where you just can't, despite all that excuse you can make, if you do not get 3 points or even get a point away from the row and you do not get the result coming out of this, it's always going to be a disappointing result. I mean, you can make the excuse and the fact that we were unlucky maybe a couple of months ago and I'll be fine with it, but because of the fact that we're in this crucial run where we're just fighting for our playoff lives and the fact that we don't get the result out of it, yeah, and I'm obviously going to be very frustrated. I'm obviously going to be very ticked off. And I'm obviously going to be very concerned about the Quakes' chances of making the playoffs. Now, after this, the Quakes are down to 6th position. And depending on what other team does, they could find themselves just above the red line in 7th position. And we wouldn't be above the red line by the end of today after all these results if it wasn't for FC Dallas completely dropped the ball in this game. So, yeah, Chicago absolutely destroyed Dallas in this game and beat them 4-0 at home. And the fact that, you know, when I watched the first 30 minutes of this game and when Chicago went up 3-0, I immediately turned the TV off, and knowing the fact that, yeah, the Fire is going to win this game and that they are just there's just no way back for Dallas in terms of the way this one went. And I think the one thing that kind of symbolized why Chicago is going to be absolutely dominate Dallas and that this is clearly not going to be Dallas Day is the first goal that Dallas conceded, because the first goal that Dallas conceded came in the 7th minute when CJ Sapon scores to give Chicago a 1-0 lead, and it was just a terrible mistake from this Dallas defense. A mix-up between both Jesse Gonzalez and Matt Hedges, where the ball was kind of playing back, and that, you know, both Gonzalez and Hedges didn't know who exactly was going to get the ball, and then there was CJ Sapon basically just kind of nicked that ball and just almost saying thank you very much for giving me this ball, and kind of just headed into the empty net. And when that happened, I knew that Dallas Dallas is going to be in for a very, very long day. And indeed, they would be, because 9 minutes later, Przemysław Frankowski scored from Bronico to give Chicago a 2-0 lead. Then Sapon scores to give Chicago a 3-0 lead from Gaetan in the 29th minute. Then Nikolic would join in the route from Frankowski to give Chicago a 4-0 lead. And Chicago could have maybe made it 5 or 6-0 if they didn't hit the post right near before halftime, and that in the second half, once again, Chicago clearly just dominated this game, but yet they weren't being very clinical to potentially make this game even worse. But yeah, at the end of the day, it was a 4-0 victory for the Fire. It was an embarrassing display by FC Dallas. And in terms of the shots in this game, 17 shots compared to 12 that Dallas had, 7 shots on goal compared to 4 that Dallas had, 8 shots off target compared to 3 that Dallas had, 2 shots that was blocked compared to 3 that Dallas had, and I actually forgot to put the possession for both of these teams, but I have a feeling most likely Chicago would have most of the possession, because they were really dominating throughout this whole game. And as I'm gonna take a look right here, in terms of the possession of both of these teams, actually, it was actually Dallas that actually got 52% possession compared to Chicago that had 48% possession in this game. But despite that, at the end of the day, only one team was in this game. And if you're Dallas, you better hope that this game is not a sign of an annual collapse that they are going to have in the latter part of the season. Because we've seen this every single year with Dallas. As soon as the month turns to September or turns to October, this team just collapsed down the stretch. And right now with Dallas, their hopes of making the playoffs is still in doubt, and that they're one of those teams that is right near the bottom of this logjam that we have in the Western Conference. If they go on a bad run like this, they could seriously miss the playoffs this season, and that they could actually miss the playoffs even sooner than what they did back in 2017 when they had that epic collapse of not making the playoffs. But as for Chicago, they were really the big winner in terms of the Eastern Conference playoff race, because all the team around them weren't able to get a result, and now I believe they are just 4 points back of New England for that last spot of the playoffs. New England do have a game in hand, and that game in hand comes this midweek when they play against RSL at home. But still, Chicago, their chances of making the playoffs is still very much alive. And now you also want to hope that, yes, they got a good result against Dallas, but they got to make sure they keep getting these kind of results and get some wins or some points on the road. Like, this team has been very good at home, and that their home record is really one of the reasons why they're still in this playoff race. But that road record and how bad it's been for the Fire this season is one of the reasons why they are not a team that is currently above the red line. But moving on into the next game is probably the upset of the week. So Columbus did something that only one other team that was able to do when they play against Atlanta at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And ironically, the other team that was able to do this was FC Dallas, who got destroyed 4-0 by Chicago in this week. And that they were able to go into Mercedes-Benz Stadium and got all 3 points against Atlanta in this game. And early on, it didn't look like that was going to be the case, and it looked like Atlanta was once again going to run away with this one. And that in the 19th minute, Joseph Martinez scores from Pity Martinez and Hyman to extend his goal-scoring streak to 14 straight game. And that, like I said, I thought we were going to be in for a rout and that this could get really ugly for Columbus. But credit to Columbus, they had a couple of decent chances in terms of getting the equalizer, and they really did very well in terms of responding by going 1-0 down. And eventually in the second half, they were rewarded by having those decent chances, with Zardes scoring the equalizer in the 53rd minute. Then they flipped the script of this game by scoring the go-ahead goal in the 60th minute when Luis Diaz scores to give them a 2-1 lead. And how about Luis Diaz? I mean, this guy, ever since he has come to Columbus and ever since Columbus have signed him as a young DP, he has just been a difference maker to this Columbus Crew team. And you just wonder for the Columbus Crew, if they were able to sign this kind of player a little bit earlier in the season, this team could have easily maybe in playoff contention and maybe would be joining one of those teams that is currently fighting for playoff position right now. Now, after Columbus did get that second goal and get that go-ahead goal, Atlanta had a lot of opportunity to potentially get the equalizer as they realized that the game was kind of getting away from them and that they need to try to get that second goal to get the equalizer so that maybe they can come back from going down 2-1 at home. But instead, it was Columbus that eventually get that third goal, and it was Miles Robinson that scored an own goal, and I wrote it was a shocking own goal because when the ball was coming into the box, and usually when you see own goals happen and when the ball comes into the box, usually the own goal happens when a defender accidentally took a poor touch and that it basically ends up into the back of the net. Well, in some way, this was exactly what happens, but I think in some way, this looked very kind of intentional of Miles Robinson just basically tapped it in front of his own net. I mean, if he was a striker and if he was playing for Columbus, that would have been an absolute beautiful finish. But the problem is, he was playing for Atlanta and that he was a defender and that he basically just put it into his own net. And that goal really kind of just set and match in this game as Columbus, with a 2-goal lead with 5 minutes to go, probably is not going to blow that lead and just going to seal out this game and get all 3 points in this one, which that is exactly what they did as they win 3-1 against Atlanta, and that the shots in this game, Atlanta had 15 shots compared to 12 that Columbus had. Both teams had 4 shots on goal, 7 shots off target compared to 4 that Columbus had. Both teams had 4 shots that was blocked, and possession-wise, 65% possession compared to 35% possession that Columbus had. And, for the Crew, it's a good victory against Atlanta, but at the same time, I kind of have a feeling that this is kind of a little bit of a bittersweet kind of victory that they had, and really throughout this run that they've been on in these last couple of weeks is kind of bittersweet because they know the fact that they are most likely not going to make the playoffs, and that with this victory they're mathematically still not eliminated from the playoffs, but they need to make up 6 points with just 3 games left to go of this season, and that unless if they can win every single of the game and rely on a couple of resort from other team to beat against the teams that is currently above them in the standings, I think most likely they are going to be done this season. But at least they finished the season strong, and maybe this run that they were on late in the season can maybe be a positive vibe heading into the off season, and that they can of course build this kind of good run that they had into the off season and maybe have a very decent season next year. And as for Atlanta, this is definitely not the result that they were hoping for, and because they dropped points in this game and that NYCFC was able to get a result against the Quakes, they now fall, I believe, 9 points back of NYCFC for that top spot. Now the good news for Atlanta is that they do have a game in hand over NYCFC, and they do face head-to-head each other in the latter part of the season. But you think with a 9-point gap, with like 4 games left or 5 games left for Atlanta to go this season, I don't know if that's just a little bit too much to overcome for them in order to maybe get themselves back at the top of the Eastern Conference. But moving on into the next match is Montreal. They're in deep trouble, the Impact. And I think it's even fair to say that their chances of making the playoffs might just gone up in flames in this game against FC Cincinnati, where not only they lost this game to FC Cincinnati, but the fact that they had so many chances in this game, and that this was really one of those games where one team was able to get a sucker punch goal and the other team just could not put the ball into the back of the net, and that whatever they tried to put the ball on whatever shots that they trying to go in front of goal, they weren't able to do exactly that. And that sucker punch goal from FC Cincinnati came actually very early in this game, and that it actually came 24 seconds in when Alan Cruz gave FC Cincinnati a dream start against the Impacts on the road. And a funny stats line that I want to mention is that this is actually the second time this season that Alan Cruz have scored in the first minute. I think there was a game earlier this season that he was able to score in the first minute, and that he scored 47 seconds into the game. So that's kind of a very strange kind of stat line, but at the same time a very impressive kind of stat line, because it's not very often that you see a player able to score a goal literally in the first minute of the game. Like, usually in most matches in MLS, the first minute of the game are kind of a little bit dire, and unless if one of those, the one team really want to pretty much go for goal from the opening whistle, that then usually the first minute you don't usually see a lot of action, and that, you know, you usually don't even see a lot of chances that was taken in the first minute. But yeah, it was pretty impressive that he was able to score for the second time this season in the first minute. But then after that, for the rest of the game, Montreal really dominated this one. And that FC Cincinnati, it seemed like they basically parked the bus for 97 minutes in this game. And yet, somehow, you know, me thinking that when FC Cincinnati was going to park the bus for 97 minutes, I just have a feeling that that is not going to work. Like, if you would have told me that FC Cincinnati was able to hang on for a 1-0 victory after scoring in the first minute, and that they were able to park the bus for 97 minutes without conceding a goal, I would think that you're just crazy, and that there is no way that is going to happen. But that is exactly what happened in this game, as once again, Montreal had a lot of chances to potentially get the equalizer or even get the winner in this game, but they couldn't find it in this one. And it's not like, you know, the Cincinnati goalkeeper Shimirsar Titon had a lot to do in this game. I mean, he did make one save in this game, and that it came right around the 35th minute, where he made an incredible save from one of the Impact player that basically struck it from close range. But that was really the only impressive save that he made throughout this game. Most of the shots for Montreal, which they had 17 compared to 8 that FC Cincinnati has, but most of those 17 shots was just gone wide and not even close to being put into the back of the net. And that it was clearly an example when you look on the shots on goal chart, where Montreal only had 1 shot on goal compared to 2 that FC Cincinnati had. 12 shots off target compared to 4 that FC Cincinnati has. 4 shots that was blocked compared to 1 that FC Cincinnati has. And possession-wise, 60% possession compared to 40% possession. And that, you know, like I said, despite the fact that I know Montreal technically is still in the hunt for the playoffs, and that, you know, I believe they're still maybe 3 or 4 points back of New England for that last spot. If you do not win at home, and especially if you do not win against the worst team in the league at home, and as I said in the preview, this was the free points game of the week, and yet if they didn't take advantage of this free points of the week, and when you don't take advantage of that, you do not deserve to make the playoffs. So yeah, I just have a feeling the Impact could potentially be done in terms of their playoff chances, and that's even when they have Piatti back for the rest of the season. Like, Piatti actually played in this game, but he didn't really made a lot of impact, and you just think that with all that injuries that he suffered throughout this season, that it has just really kind of took a toll off of his body, and that he just cannot have that same impact as he would have done early this season. But moving on into the next match is the 6-pointer game. So in the 6-pointer playoff game between Orlando City versus New England, saw 6 goals in this one, and I have a feeling both teams will not be happy about this result, although I think maybe Orlando City will not be happy with will be the more unhappier side in this resort, considering the fact that they had to win this game if they want to get themselves back in the playoff race. But in the first half, Orlando actually got off to a terrible start when Akindele unfortunately puts it into his own net to give New England a 1-0 lead. But to the credit of Orlando City, they did respond well, and that Nani scores a wonderful chip of a goal to tie the game up at 1 apiece from Pereira in the 22nd minute. And then, just as Orlando City started to attack on the New England box and that they had a ton of chances to potentially get the second goal, out of nowhere, Pineda scores from Carlos Hill to give New England a 2-1 lead. Then they would double that lead when Gustavo Bo scores from Carlos Hill to give New England a 3-1 lead. And I'll tell you what, this Bo and Hill kind of partnership, this has started to become one of the most dangerous dynamic duo in the league right now. I mean, not only Carlos Hill this season, no doubt, has been having a very under-the-radar season in that he is considered one of the most underrated, creative midfielder in this league. But the fact that he's able to link up play from Gustavo Bo, and that ball, we know that he can, of course, put the ball into the back of the net if you give him any inch of space to do, just is another example of New England clearly for the first time in really a long time in their franchise history where they actually got some of the moves that they made in the offseason spot on in this season. But yeah, New England were up 3-1 at halftime, and that I thought, for Orlando City, looked like their playoff chances was really going to extinguish. But in the second half, 2 minutes into the second half, Dom Dwyer gives hope for Orlando City from Nani to make this a 1-goal game. Then their hopes of potentially coming back into this game and maybe even winning this game was come into full force when Nani scores another beautiful goal in the 54th minute to tie the game up at 3 apiece. And I also wrote goal of the week because the way that he basically just danced around outside the box, just looking for some space to shoot that one, was just absolutely incredible. And eventually, when he did find that little tiny space to basically hit one from outside the box, he basically hits it and it ends up into the back of the net. So, yeah, at that point, it was tied up at 3 apiece, and that, Orlando, just like how they got the equalizer early on in this game, they were really putting a lot of pressure on this New England team, and that the Revs were really on the ropes for the last 30 minutes of this game. But as it's been the biggest problem for Orlando City this season, whenever they tends to try to shoot from everywhere and try to create some big chances, they weren't able to do that. And aren't able to be clinical in terms of putting the ball into the back of the net. And at the end of the day, the game ends in a free draw. And I actually did not write down the stat line for this game, so I'm going to have to once again go into MLSsoccer.com to check the stat lines for this game. And by the way, Orlando City, to tell you how close that they came in terms of getting that 4th goal, there was a moment in the 61st minute when Matt Turner, Matt Turner really had an amazing game and probably was one of the reasons why New England was able to even get a point out of this game. He made a double save in the 61st minute to keep this one at 3 apiece, and then there was another instant where he made a save and pushed that one off the post around the 75th minute to keep the game at 3 apiece. So yeah, he really had an incredible game to keep this one at 3-3 and at least give New England a point out of this one. And as I look at the stats right now in this game, Orlando City had 19 shots compared to 15 that New England has, 7 shots on goal compared to 6 that New England has, 52% possession compared to New England 48% possession. And in terms of the shots that was blocked, it doesn't really tell me in terms of the shots that was blocked in this game or the shots off target. But, at the end of the day, for New England, I guess the only thing that they will be disappointed about this game is the fact that they did blow a 3-1 lead and that they could have had a chance to get themselves in a better position in terms of making the playoffs. And for Orlando City, this is a must-win for them, and the fact that they weren't able to get all 3 points in this game makes me feel like most likely they are going to miss the playoffs. I mean, they still have a slim chance of making the playoffs, and I believe they are still 3 points back of New England for that last playoff spot. But keep in mind, New England does have that game in hand, and Orlando City's got to pray that in that game in hand that New England has, which is the one where they play at home against RSL, and that New England is able to either drop points in that game or lose that game so that they can still have hopes heading into the last 3 game of their season. But moving on into the last game on this board, and the last game that I'm going to be reviewing for part 1 is the game of the week between the Union versus LAFC, where it ends in a 1-1 draw. And overall, I think when you look at how this game goes, I think a 1-1 draw is a fair result, considering the fact that both teams kind of look very even throughout this game. The Union got off to a great start in the 3rd minute when Shabilko scores from Fafa, Pico, and Bedoya to give them a 1-0 lead. But then Vela scores in the 43rd minute to tie the game up at 1 apiece. Vela actually did get substitute off of this game in the second half, and he definitely was not happy about the fact that he got subbed off. But at least the good news for LAFC is, despite the fact that they subbed off Vela, they immediately brought on their 3rd DP that they just got a couple of weeks ago in Brian Rodriguez. I mean, that is just such a luxury that I'm pretty sure not a lot of team in the league could have, where you can literally just sub off one of your DP and bring on another one of your DP that you just bought a couple of weeks ago. Now, in the second half, both teams had chances to score the go-ahead goal, but unfortunately, both teams could not able to do that. And part of that has to do with the fact that both keeper was doing very good in this game. Andre Blake made a couple of very decent saves to keep this one at 1-1, and the same goes with Tyler Miller making some big save to keep this one at 1 apiece. And yeah, that of course was the final score of this game, as the shots in this game, 16 shots compared to 9 that the Union has, 4 shots on goal compared to 3 that the Union has, 9 shots off target compared to 4 that the Union has, 3 shots that was blocked compared to 2 that the Union has, and both teams had 50% possession. And overall, for the Union, while they did not get a win in this game against LAFC, I think in some way they kind of send a message to the league that, we can go toe-to-toe against the best team in the league. And that for many time this season, we have always questioned the fact that while the Union is one of the top team in the Eastern Conference, can they, of course, able to hang with the big team, and can they able to get resort against the big team? Well, in this game against LAFC, it's proven that they can hang with the big team, and I would definitely be very fascinated to see what they are going to do in the playoffs, and that whether or not can they finally end their playoff curse, which is them not able to win a single game in the playoffs, despite the fact that they have been in the playoffs 3 times in their franchise history. And as for LAFC, I know this is 4 games without a win, and I know there's going to be some LAFC fans that is going to be concerned with the fact that the team are in a bad slump. But keep in mind, they were playing on the road against one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference, and the fact that, they just got Vela who back in this game who wasn't really 100% healthy, I'm not going to be that concerned with the fact that LAFC is on this bad run. Now, if they continue this bad run and continue to not able to get a win heading down the stretch in this regular season, then yeah, there's gonna definitely be some concern, and that maybe LAFC could actually do what they did last year, which is they had a good run of the first season, but then once playoff time come, they weren't able to win when it really matters the most. Although this time, they won't win when it matters the most in the playoffs, because they were heading into the playoffs in a bad run. And as I said many times before, you do not want to head into the playoffs on a bad run. But either way, guys, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash that subscribe button. As I said, I will do the second part of the review later tonight, when I look at the last game on Saturday and look at the last 5 games that is going to be happening on Sunday. But either way, guys, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.